This division, okay, this has been the best division in college football for 10 or 12 years. I'm guessing, there was a transition. I think the SEC East, when Tennessee was better, when Florida was dominant under Urban Meyer, you could have made an argument. But for the past 10 or 12 years or so, the Western Division has been the best in college football, not even close. But I don't know if it's been this good, even though LSU's down, Auburn's down. And when I say this good, maybe not at the top, but all the way through, there was always somebody to push around. Arkansas was awful for 3 or 4 years. There was always somebody to push around. There's nobody to push around now. Everybody's good. Everybody's
Even
good in the end. If there's going to be anybody, it might be Auburn this year, but I'm not convinced that they're going to be that bad. I still think that they're loaded with talent and going to be, if they went and played somewhere else in pretty much any other division in college football, except maybe the Big Ten East, they would they might have a shot to win the thing. Like, that's how deep this division is. It's 1 through 7.
Yeah, you look at that Arkansas, and you mentioned them being bad for the last couple of years. Even that Arkansas squad gave A&M, all those games were basically one possession games at AT&T Stadium, and so as bad as they had been, you always had teams that can find themselves on a week. And you mentioned Auburn, and they're a tough team to figure out because I think they've obviously got a lot of holes to replace. I have big question marks at the quarterback position about what they're going to look like, whether it's TJ Finley, whether it's TJ Finley or Zach Calzada, just not really sure, what they're going to look like. But you're right. I mean, a lot of people looking at that game against Penn State at Jordan Hare thinking, okay, they might have a chance to knock off Penn State. And so, but you're right. Even the depth, I think LSU is going to be competitive. I think LSU is going to be very competitive this year with Miles Brennan or Garrett Nussmeier. I would caution people. I watched Garrett Nussmeier in high school, and he put on one of the best performances I had seen in a game between Marcus and Flower Mound, which is a rivalry game. He absolutely destroyed Flower Mound. And so, he's a guy I think that's got all the talent in the world. If they let him take over the starting job this year or down the road, I think he's got all the talent. But you're right. I mean, the top to bottom, if you don't bring it on a certain week, and, even looking at Arkansas last year, and it could be the case for Arkansas this year, when you look at their schedule, I mean, you can be a very good team in this conference and be 8-4 or 7-5 and just have a brutal schedule. I mean, you really can. Arkansas last year had a really good team and just ran into a brutal schedule with some of the teams they had to play. Obviously, having to play Georgia and Alabama in the same year is super tough. And so I think you can make a case that top to bottom, this is the most competitive league around.
It's getting to a point with that division being as stacked as it is. And again, it's not even comparable across the nation. It's the best division in college football. That if you're poor Auburn, you play Georgia every year and you play that division. And then if it cycles through in the SEC Eastern Division, then you play somebody else that's good, let's say Kentucky, then you get no breaks. And you mentioned Arkansas. They went ahead and scheduled Cincinnati and BYU out of conference. Now, I think they're better than those two teams, but they're certainly dangerous games and difficult games, not games that you can say, okay, we're going to be shut down in the second half and playing our third and fourth stringers because we're playing Furman or someone and we can rest up for the next game. That's going to be difficult to add those games onto what they have to struggle through in the SEC.
And can you imagine? I mean, I know there's a point about UT here. Can you imagine if the SEC does end up going to 9 games, as is kind of being talked about, kind of the gauntlet that they're going to have to go through, and so it's going to be fascinating just on a week to week basis. Yeah, the Cincinnati Arkansas game is going to be a fascinating game. I think when you look at Cincinnati's just coming off a run to the playoffs. That's a team that was one of the top 4 teams in the country last year, and beat Notre Dame. And so, it's gonna it's going to be kind of fascinating to watch, and it there's going to be surprises. Mississippi State with Mike Leach, they've come up and beaten quite a few teams the last couple of years, and that's he obviously builds a really good program at Washington State as well, and gave a lot of folks problems there. I think they're going to surprise some folks this year, and so top to bottom and every week it's going to be tough. And South Carolina, who knows where they're going to kind of be with Spencer Rattler, but they can beat anybody on any given week.
Yeah, Shane Beamer did a remarkable job last year. He played 4 starting quarterbacks. They all played 3 games, and he had nothing at quarterback, nothing that would
had a graduate assistant playing.
Graduate assistant. A GA started 3 games. Like none of those quarterbacks that played last year should be starting an SEC game, and he made it through a 13-game schedule and went 7-6 and won a bowl game. So with Spencer Rattler, a top 10 to 15 quarterback in the country, that could be interesting. Although their schedule is brutal, but that's not going to be an easy out for A&M.
No, not at all. And it just and again, kind of going back to the A&M side, but that speaks to the point about A&M's got to travel to Mississippi State and to South Carolina. I don't think those are going to be easy games at all. And they've got the trip to Auburn later in the year. They're going to have to be much more consistent and dialed in, and because those are not easy trips to make. And I think everybody's going to be pretty competitive this year.